Hello, hello. We are live on the HVAC Guide for Homeowners YouTube channel. I need to get a better intro, like have some sort of music. I've been saying that for a while now, but anyway, we run a real tight ship here. So welcome, Gary and Carl. As always, nice to see you guys again. And if you are joining us for the first time or joining us again, welcome. Feel free to drop any heating and air questions you might have in the chat. We usually have a few other pros that join us, and they will sometimes answer your questions as well. So, wanted to start out tonight. If you can see there's some pictures of a house fire. And hey, Gil, good to see you. A house fire in a house that burned down this week, and they're saying that this house, that the damage is almost $500,000. So pretty crazy news story this week. It says a fire that caused, this is out of Delaware, by the way. Let's see, Lincoln area and Delaware. I'm not real familiar with Delaware, so I don't know where exactly that is. But it says Lincoln, Delaware. So there's pictures of the fire department doing their thing. What's crazy, actually, this picture here looks like the house was still kind of there, was still hanging on, when the fire department arrived. And then as you can see there, they didn't save it. Let's put it that way. I would guess that there's not going to be a lot to be salvaged. They'll probably have to completely rebuild the house if they want to do that. So, but it says a fire that caused nearly $500,000 of damage to a house in Sussex County and displaced 10 occupants was caused by a faulty HVAC unit. The blaze broke out around 4 a.m. Monday, and it gives kind of the address, but I'm going to leave that out. The fire started in a sunroom in the ranch-style house, and 10 occupants managed to get out safely before crews from the Ellendale Volunteer Fire Company, so shout out to those guys, and nearby departments brought the fire under control, but one woman was taken to the Bay Health Sussex campus for medical evaluation. So hopefully she's okay. Damage to the house is estimated at $450,000. So pretty crazy. I would guess, now this is a total guess. I know nothing, other than what we see here, but it says that it was on the sunroom, and a lot of our customers at Griffin Air, if it's on their sunroom, a lot of them will have mini splits out there. So they'll have, some sort of conventional or ducted heating and air system in the main part of the house, and then they'll do a mini split in the sunroom. So pretty sad story there. Let's see if this article says anything else other than what that article says. Nope, pretty much says the same thing, just worded a different way, but pretty sad. Says that the heating and air system caused this fire. So I guess the only thing I would take away from this is I've talked to a few people in the last week, well, actually 2 weeks. This is a reoccurring thing that pops up on my radar because there are a lot of options out there for homeowners, especially DIY options, but it's not just DIY options. There's other heating and air guys that are, it's not just the homeowners doing DIY stuff. There's heating and air guys not doing the things that they should do to protect homeowners. And so I think you could argue, well, Josh, maybe this wasn't the installer. It's possible something failed from the factory. We don't know the full story here, but I would say that it's more likely, in my experience, that it's something that the, installer or someone that didn't know what they were doing did something to cause this fire. So pretty sad to see that, and hopefully everybody does end up being okay. But obviously quite an expensive problem, expensive thing that, happened there. And we wish those folks the best. Hey Sean, good to see you. Olivia, I think this is the first time I've seen your name, so welcome. Olivia says, for 454B refrigerant, I'm not sure exactly what your question is, or maybe you're asking when that will be out, and I don't know the answer to that. I'm not even sure the folks that are going to be using that refrigerant know the answer to that yet. But it's soon, it is soon. We did a video recently where we talked about, the process of things and how 410A refrigerant is going away, and they've even set a date for that. They set the date saying that the beginning of 2025, the year 2025, that 410A refrigerant will no longer be installed in any new equipment being sold. So this is going to be, we've still got some time. We've still got a little bit of a process here, but, you would obviously hope to start seeing some of these new products with these newer refrigerants start to come out before that date gets here. So, as that January 1st, 2025 gets closer and closer, you would think, we're going to start seeing some R32 and R454B refrigerant products hit the market. It'll be interesting to see who comes out with them first, who hits the market first with the R454B, especially considering it's so new that it's a very untested refrigerant in comparison to R32, which has been around for a couple decades. So good to see you, Arch from Arizona in the house. Carl, a DIYer. Yeah, that's what my guess would be. Carl says, what is 410A? What is 410A is being sold to the customer for? I'm not sure what you're saying there. Are you saying that what is it being sold to the customer for? You might be saying, is someone selling it to the customer and they shouldn't be, or maybe you're asking how much, what the actual price is there. I'm not sure. Sean says, any new products out there to insulate a main trunk in hard to reach areas? The only product that Carl says the price. Yeah, I'm not sure. I don't even know what we're paying for right now, to be completely honest with you. I was told that it went down in price. So I have somebody at our company that keeps track of that, and they will adjust our pricing accordingly. But I was told that it did go down recently, pretty significantly. And don't hold me to this, but I'm wanting to say we were paying, close to $600 a jug. And then it was closer to, I'm wanting to say $450 maybe. That's just a guess. Sean says, any new products out there to insulate the main trunk in hard to reach areas? Sean, the main product I would probably say that we've seen, and I think it's going to be, we're going to see it more and more, is that spray foam looking stuff. The folks that have the spray foam in the walls, well, they're also now putting it literally on the ductwork. And they say that it's very dense and it can seal. When I say they say, it's because I personally have not used it. I think I have been in one or two houses that had it in it. So it's not something we're seeing a lot in my area, but there are some areas that the guys are, using it a lot. And that might be the ticket for you. Let's see. Arch says, contractors being equal. What's your opinion of a 3.5 ton package, 13.4 to 14 SEER package heat pumps for rooftop replacement for Rheem, Trane, and Daikin? Rheem Rude, most common RTU around here. I was told by the manufacturer that Daikin package heat pump was better quality than the similar Goodman unit. Well, I think that might be true to a degree, but it is the same company. We like Daikin, Daikin / Goodman. I would, I cringe when you say with contractors being equal, because I don't think that that's true. So I would probably say the answer to your question is, which contractor are you going to go with? Which one gives you the more warm fuzzies? I will say, of those three brands, none of them jump out at me. Not, if you were to say, some brands that I would say, no way, stay away from them. But the ones you mentioned are not, not a part of that. So I would say pick the better contractor and go with the brand that they will stand behind. Ryan says, will you need to get your EPA 608 again for the new refrigerants? And will you need new HVAC tools and instruments to measure R454B and R32 pressures? So we did a video on this recently on the tools. And I think in general, the answer to your question is you should not need a whole bunch of new tools. Now, if you want a set of gauges that has the little, has those pressures, the saturation temperatures and things like that of those refrigerants on there, well, then you're going to have to get gauges that reflect that. And then the other thing I would say is if you're going to have a recovery machine, it's going to probably need to be rated for A2L refrigerants. Not probably, it should be. But aside from that, will you need to get your EPA card again? It's probably going to be like 410A. It's probably going to be one of those deals where it's going to be something separate. 410A had a separate certification, which I believe the 608 is. I can't remember just off the top of my head, but I think you're going to have a separate A2L refrigerant certification that you're going to see folks. And I would guess that it's not going to be a requirement out the gate, but it could be someday as things continue to come out. You might see companies, requiring it, or, the EPA requiring it more and more. It's usually the states in charge of that, right? So that, you might have some states that are more strict than others. But right now, I think it's one of those deals where each state is going to, approve it or not. I mean, I can't see any of them saying no because they don't have a lot of choices here. But during the recording of this video, we're still waiting on a lot of states to approve these new refrigerants. And I think that's part of the holdup too. That, I know somebody else was asking about the new products coming out. Last I heard, there's only 5 states, 5 out of 50 that has approved these new refrigerants. So we're still waiting on that. Carl says, being you are a Daikin dealer, can you order equipment using R32 rather than 410A? Carl, not yet. Not in Virginia. If I was in North Carolina, yes, I could. The guys in North Carolina are already getting it. They're getting jugs of it and things like that. Arch says, these 2 contractors were recommended by friends and neighbors. Good for you, getting some recommendations. And that's always a good thing. Obviously, you want to get the good and the bad, right? And I feel like friends and family are the only places you're usually going to get that. I see a lot of people go on social media, like Facebook, for example, and they'll say, who's the best heating and air company in this area? And you'll see a bunch of people saying this company and that company, and they'll just say all these different companies. But what's comical is you'll see people commenting, and it's like, the guy's wife or the guy's sister, so you're not really getting a good recommendation there. I would hope, I don't have a sister, but I would hope my sister would recommend me as well, right? But, you're just not always getting a good snapshot of who's the best company in your area for that, Carl says, is my universal EPA card from 30 years ago the same as the present 608? I think I could be wrong, but I think the 608 is for 410A. But honestly, as long as I carried the universal, I don't think I've ever had anyone say, hey, do you have your 410A certification card as well? I've just never had anybody do that. They came out with that, I believe, originally because the pressures were so much higher. It was significantly higher than R22 back then. But I could be wrong on that as well. I'm just speculating. But to answer your question, your universal card from 30 years ago is the same as a universal card today, and you could still buy a refrigerant, as far as I know. Arch says, our old heat pump was horizontal ductwork, and one of the contractors said the transition would cost the same as a curb install. Is one better than the other? It's hard to say. Every house is different. I would get a couple recommendations on that, Arch. Horizontal ductwork versus curb. Yeah, it would depend on the house, and you guys out there, y'all have those RTUs that we simply don't have that here. That is very unique for your area that I had never even heard of until I started helping people on our guide, where I help people with stuff like that. I remember somebody telling me, "Oh, I have a swamp cooler." They were in Utah. They said I had a swamp cooler, and I said, "Well, I thought a swamp cooler was one of those things that we were kind of making with." We were taking a cooler and a bucket of ice and, making swamp cooler things, right? But no, they have these actual units on their roof, and they're swamp coolers. And again, they're very unique to their area because they can only operate in non-humid areas. They have to, they have their place, if you will. So you guys in Arizona that have those rooftop units, package units, that is something that, if you move to New York, for example, you wouldn't see them. You won't find a single house, I would guess, in the entire state that would have it done that way. So it's just something unique to your area. And another thing I've noticed is guys will say, I learned how to do heating and air in one state and I moved to another area and it's like I'm starting over again. I've heard guys from down south moving up north saying, I've never messed with a furnace before, or vice versa. You'll see guys from up north start moving south and they'll say, what? I don't know how to diagnose a heat pump. It's just, it's the nature of the region you're in, how unique the products are and things like that. Let's see. Mr. Bird says, should I have heat pump dehumidifier feature enabled on a fit if I already have a whole house dehumidifier? Thanks. Depends on your home. I don't think it's going to hurt anything to have it enabled, other than it's probably going to at times run a little longer to reach the humidity settings you have it set at. And you probably honestly would save some energy. Because dehumidifiers some dehumidifiers can suck in some energy. Let's see. Arch says a lot of flat roofs around here in the desert. Ryan says, when would someone need to use a product like the ICM 325A universal head pressure control? Let me make sure that I think I know what that is, but I just want to make sure. It's a phase monitor, which is what I thought it was. Yeah. So phase monitors are, we just installed one last week. So phase monitors, I think, are going to become more of a thing. Surge protectors are great, right? They protect you from surges, but surge protectors can't protect you against things like brownouts. So that's where phase monitors, if there were, imagine like a good, better, best kind of thing, I would not install a single inverter system. In fact, we're getting to where we don't install systems at all without surge protection. But I would not install an inverter system without a surge protection. But I have installed them without phase monitors, I guess, is the point. So in that good, better, best, phase monitor is going to be the best. It's going to be next step up from, say, a surge protection, because it's going to protect you from surges. It's going to protect you from brownouts and among other things. It's funny you brought up that, because I just talked to my supplier today who was telling me about a company they were helping that. So he works for the supplier for, he's kind of the middleman or the distributor for the products, and the contractor had installed a system. The system, and it's ironically is the brand that I sell. It was Daikin, and they had a failure of some kind. So It was during COVID, and they couldn't get parts or something for some reason, so they gave the guy a new system. And so he puts the new system in, and then, not long after that, the compressor fails. And I can tell you that is very, especially on an inverter Daikin, I've never had one fail. So for him to have two failures, you either would say it was the installer or something else is going on here. And so he was adamant that it's not the installer. This is a great company. It's one of the bigger ones, and they have a great reputation and so on. So make a long story short, they ended up finding out after they replaced the system again because of a failed compressor, trying to make this customer happy, that it was dirty power, and they were having power an influx at times of as much as 265 volts going into this unit. Well, that's gonna kill things. I don't care what the brand is. It's gonna kill compressors and boards and things like that. It's not designed to run off of voltages that high. And they do have a little bit of, a little give, a little bit of a range that it'll be okay, but not that high. And so, make a long story short, they put a phase monitor on it and never looked back. They haven't had any more issues. So Carl says, being as 410A is going bye-bye, it seems it's getting to the point that installing 410 equipment isn't in the best interest for the long term for the customer. Yeah, I actually have told a few customers that if you can get through this time, if you can get through the next year, that's the real problem here. Some people have no choice. It's time to replace. They're not going to put thousands of dollars into a repair for an old system, or they simply don't have a system, right? They need a system of some type, and they don't have time to so those folks are in a tough spot. But I just told somebody about a month ago, a couple weeks ago, his system was fine, and he's like, well, I just don't want to get on a hot summer day and be without. And I said, I'm no psychic, that could happen, but let me tell you all the things that are going on in the industry right now. And I explained some of the things that you're pointing out there, Carl. So, if somebody can wait, it might not be a bad time to wait, wait till these new products come out. But see, that opens up another can of worms. Do you want to be first in line to those new products? Do you want to be the first one, especially with these products that are going to be using R454B? Do you want to be the guinea pig? It's kind of tough. I wouldn't want to be. Let's put it that way. I wouldn't want to be the guy that your heat and air company is learning off of. I wouldn't want to be first in line. So, it's kind of a double-edged sword there. Arch says, swamp coolers used to be the most common form of cooling out here, but they don't work well when the monsoon arrives and brings the humidity with it. Yeah, that's what they were saying, that, if the more humidity there is, the less effective they are, so you got to have some non-humidity, states to put those in. Emery, good to see you. Hey, just had my unit check up. Everything works. Good enough. Ryan says, Carl, that's why I'm not upgrading my HVAC unit. Makes no sense to install a 410A system if you're in a position to wait. Emery says, just had my unit checked up. Everything works. Thought you would like to know. Good to know. Sean says, what are your thoughts on hard start kits for single stage units? I like a hard start kit if it's installed properly and it's rated right for that unit. I've gotten to where I like a soft start more than a hard start in certain situations. But if that unit is getting older and it's starting to get that, clunkiness, and it's having a hard time getting rolling and things like that, hard start will buy you some time as well. And in fact, a hard start, if you're not going to have a soft start, a hard start is good to have, even, as long as you're not voiding warranties on a new system. Some brands have them. Some brands have hard starts on the new system. It comes from the factory that way. Carl says phase monitors are for 3-phase. There are phase monitors for 3-phase. Yes, there are also phase monitors for single phase. Arch says, Trane American Standard are rated the highest on Consumer Reports based on customer surveys. Is Trane really that reliable and worth the extra money? I sold American Standard for a number of years. I think it's an okay product. I think they're fine. I think they're up there with some of the better companies. But I would say these Consumer Reports, if you notice, they change every year. And, it's sort of like, if I were to say, hey, Arch, what do you have in your home and do you like it? Well, you're either going to say, yes, I like it, or no, I don't. And they're going to take a snapshot of people that they're going to ask these questions to, right? So that's what Consumer Reports is doing. I'm not sure that it's the best representation of what you should base your buying on. I did a video years ago on, American Standard was, the best with Consumer Reports. But, it just gets kind of, it's like if you ask somebody that owns a Ford, hey, do you like Chevrolet? When they've never owned a Chevrolet, they're going to say, well, no, I like Ford. I own Fords and my family always drove Fords and I think they're great. So I just don't know that it's always the best representation of, who's most reliable. I sell what I sell now because of some of the brands we used to sell having issues, and I'll just leave it at that. Let's see. I don't know how to say your name. So cold Alu. My son recently got quotes for a change out, and the Daikin dealer could not get the fit in 2-ton size. Are you aware of this is a short or long-term issue? I don't know why they couldn't get them. We just installed a 2-ton fit, so I'm not sure what was going on there. Coolin with Kraus. Hey, another pro in the area. What's up, man? Per ESCO, the reduction of 410A will be 40% by 2024, 70% by 2029, and 80% by 2034, and 85% by 2036. Still have time. I'm going to make a prediction here. That's going to go up. I think that's those numbers you just gave. That is what the AIM Act is shooting for. But I think that you're going to see, especially more progressive states, they're going to move that timeline up. They're gonna phase out 410A pretty quick once these other refrigerants start coming out. They know what the deal is now. They learned what to do and what not to do with R22 and how to get what they want. And I would bet. What are we saying here? So the year 2030. I would bet 2030 is 6 years from now, and by 2025. 6.5 years, sorry. But by the year 2025, we're going to see, the new or 410A equipment no longer being sold, supposedly, right? We're going to assume that is going to go through that law, or that, I don't know if law is the right word, but that's what the DOE is pushing for. And so I think that, that timeline is going to be moved up. I'm going to guess by 2030, you're going to see it. I'm not going to say completely phased out, but probably maybe at that 85% number. And that's just my prediction. I could be wrong, but I think that as soon as the new refrigerant products come out, they're going to speed it up. They're going to start saying, let's get this stuff reduced here. But that's just my guess. Arch says, Red on Ream's site runs between 208 and 230 to prevent damage for power fluctuations. Yeah, they do have a range there. So like I have a customer that they were getting, I think it was 244 volts or 245. And so we called our factory rep and just, I figured it was okay, but I wanted their blessing. And so we got it, so there is a little bit of a range there, a little bit of a cushion, but 265 volts is not a big enough cushion. Let's see, we're coming up on 9:00, guys. I'm going to take a break here for a segment. We always like to have a little segment here from your comments. So we're going to break from your comments for a second. And tonight I want to do for hypothetical inventions. So we did a couple weeks ago, we did the plastic ductwork. Last week we did the geothermal loops, a part of the foundation. So when they dig the foundation to build a house, go ahead and drop the loops. Obviously it has to be a bigger house for that to make sense. And then this week, our hypothetical invention that I'm going to throw out there, and I've thrown this out in a few videos before, but this week's hypothetical invention that we might see that I think would be a good invention is Bluetooth thermostats. And instead of having thermostats that are hardwired, now I'm not saying Wi-Fi thermostat. I'm not saying, because some of you, I've had people say, well, I don't have Wi-Fi in my house and I ain't getting the internet. We don't need the internet. And that's fine. If you don't have it, want it, we have some older customers at Griffin Air and they don't have it or want it. They're getting by just fine without it, but Bluetooth technology, on the other hand, is simply just a wireless technology. It's sort of like if you get you have your phone and you get, some headphones that are Bluetooth capable, and you can connect to your phone without a wire. I'm wondering if I think it would be a good idea to have some Bluetooth technology thermostats so that they can connect to the indoor and outdoor unit with no wires. Now I'm sure that we could all argue and say, oh, we're going to have failures with that now, and that's probably a good argument. But the argument, or the pro to that versus the cons, would be that Bluetooth thermostats could be mounted anywhere. That if you want it mounted in your bedroom, you put it in your bedroom. If you want it sitting on a table instead of the wall, you do that. If you want it in the kitchen or in the den or the hallway or whatever, you can move it around. So I've thrown that hypothetical invention out there before. I don't know. Let me know your thoughts on that invention. I do think that if they had that invention too, you would see a lot of folks that are now doing these things where they'll do remote sensors in other rooms of the house. You wouldn't have to do any of that. You put the thermostat where you want it, where you want to measure your temperatures, and that's how it would work. So not only do I think that invention is, may or may, it could come, they already have the technology to do it. We're seeing control boards come in and they have to be programmed, for certain systems via Bluetooth. We have to connect them to our phones, use an app, program it, tell them, what your airflow or whatever that you need for the air handler and so on. So they definitely have the capability of having Bluetooth only thermostats instead of wireless. I think one other issue with that might be having ranges. Bluetooth, I'm sure, does have a certain distance that you could install the thermostat from the unit, but I would say most thermostats are within 20 feet, if not 30 or 40 feet of the indoor unit, so just throwing that out there. Let me know your thoughts. Let's see. So Coldaloo says, I recently had a 3.5 ton fit installed in our older home. No surge suppression was installed. Should it be installed on both the heat pump and or air handler? I definitely would have it installed on the heat pump. No ifs, ands, or buts. It's an inverter system. I would definitely have it installed there. The failure rate on those inverter compressors is significantly low, especially if you have a surge protector on there. So definitely get that put on there. Arch says, I read on one of the forums that Trane is using a lot of Chinese parts that don't know how true this is, and imagine other manufacturers might be doing the same thing. Yeah, they're all doing that. Let's be honest. I don't know that for sure, but I would guess. Tech Junkie, good to see you. Tech Junkie says Consumer Reports is a fraud. No comment. Arch says, agree, because they don't actually test the units anymore. not sure what he's talking about there. I assume he might be commenting on the Chinese part. Brian says, I like videos over snaps. Same with diagnostic. Toyota. Arch says, opinions are like noses. Everyone has one. My dad used to say something similar to that, but he didn't say noses. Emery says, what is the minimum SEER rating currently for new units? So it depends on where you're located in the country. We did a video. I don't know them off the top of my head, but they're in the neighborhood. So like I'm in Virginia and I can't buy a split system for, I think it's less than 14.3 heat pump. I think the AC might be 1 C or 2 less than that, maybe. I can't remember off the top of my head. But I think it's 14.3, and then the package units are 13.4, if I remember correctly. But every state's different. So if you're above Virginia, all the states below Virginia are the southern states, and that's where they're at. But then the states above Virginia are a little lower standards. They don't have to have quite as strict yet. It's interesting how they do all that. Carl says, I want a surge protector on both. ECM motors are expensive and fragile. I agree. How about a Daikin Altherma needs a swap? What do you do? I have not messed with the Althermas. In fact, I don't even know that we have those in the US. I think that's more of a Europe thing, and or maybe you're seeing them in Canada. I don't know. If maybe I'm wrong, maybe they have them in the US and just maybe my supplier doesn't carry them, because that is true for a few products. That there are a few products that Daikin does sell in this country, but my supplier does not carry them. Now he can get them if I really want it, but there's just, in some cases there's no sense in him having certain products in stock if he's, if we don't need it in my area. Brian says 410A was a mistake. The question is, was it on purpose? That's a whole nother topic. Ms. Walker, I don't even want to try to say your first name because I'd probably insult you, but she says window unit for HVAC system. I don't mess with window units a whole lot. Usually if folks have a window unit, it's just as cheap to just go ahead and buy a new unit. But I was just talking to somebody today about, he was asking me, he said, I don't know if I really want to get a mini split, but I already have a window unit, but it's just super loud. And so the more we were talking about it, we looked into it. They do have window ACs now that have inverter technology, so they're quieter. So that's interesting. That's something new. I don't know how new, because I had just never seen it before. But they, that it's kind of neat. Sorry, I'm reading other comments as I'm trying to finish my thought here. Let's see. Tech Junkie says, don't they have that? I'm not aware of that, Tech Junkie. They do have wireless thermostats, but I don't know that they're Bluetooth technology where you can go and, buy, like you say, an Ecobee or a Honeywell or something like that off the shelf and Bluetooth connect to the units and work them that way. That I'm not aware of. Carl says Bluetooth 5.0 has a pretty good range. Cooling with Kraus says, anything down the pipeline for that, similar to Cool Cloud? Right. Yeah. So they do have the technologies, Bluetooth capability on a lot of the heating and air stuff we're already using. I think I was envisioning more like, you see all these thermostat companies that make these hardwired thermostats, and, being able to buy a Bluetooth thermostat and contrast, and not have to wire it up. You just connect to your unit just like you would anything else Bluetooth capable. Ryan says Bluetooth has limited range sometimes and can be obstructed easily. Very true. You would have to think about placement of the units, indoor and outdoor. Good idea. The Bluetooth protocol gets updated frequently and improves. Arch says even with 410A, even if 410A is replaced, will it still be available for many years? We're hoping to get at least 15 years out of the new heat pump that will be installed fairly soon on our roof. Arch, yes. I think that's the other thing. I think folks that are freaking out about this, that are, worried about not replacing their system quite yet, and they're trying to hang on and get more years so they can just go ahead and get one of the systems with the new refrigerant. 410A, we have plenty of time. We definitely have a decade, I would say. I mean, if you use R22 as an example, R22, 410A started coming out in the early 90s. There were carrier products already coming out with 410A refrigerant in them here in the US. And then we were still buying R22 equipment with R22 in it up into, I don't remember the exact year, but I'm wanting to say around 2010 to 2012. And then even for a number of years after that, we could still buy equipment dry charged up until 2016. So, not that long ago, just a handful of years ago, I installed a couple. I remember that last year, they said, this is it. And I had customers that didn't want to replace their air handler. They wanted to stay R22. But anyway, I think if you use that as your example, I would say that we should still see another decade at least of being able to get 410A. Now, I do think it's going to go up in price as the years go on, but that's just like everything else, Cooling with Kraus says, with inverters, I would recommend the ICM 493. You can ask your contractors on that. Tech Junkie says, window units with inverter are not quieter. I had a few. Okay, good to know. Emery says, when did they make a decision to stop making units with R22? Well, they knew that they were going to start phasing it out in the early 90s. Early to mid 90s, they knew that R22, they said it was bad for the ozone and they wanted to get rid of it. And so then, they picked 410A as the next in line. So that's when it started being phased down or out. And then again, it stayed around all the way up until the mid 2010s as far as the equipment goes. Bryn, good to have you. I haven't seen you on our channel before, so good to see you. Crazy, I was going through your videos and saw you're live. Just set up 3 quotes for replacement of a 2011 3-ton 14-SEER single-stage unit that had the condenser fail. Good to know. Good luck on that. How's it going so far? I'd love to, let us know how that's going. And, I'm sure you're calling around. I would definitely don't just call, don't just Google it and call the first 3 companies. Maybe ask your neighbor who they use and why they use who they use. But yeah, so any more questions, put them in the chat. We're going to take another break, another segment here. We're going to take a break from the chat, and our next segment, I wanted to, at Griffin Air, we actually support a few good causes. So we take a portion of the money that comes in from our customers and we promote, or we take, we send some of that to good causes. And, part of that is we wanted to do that anyway, right? It's, you want to send money to causes you believe in that are doing good things. But we also wanted to tell our customers a portion of your business, your money is going to support these causes too. So tonight I wanted to highlight one of those. Let's see. Bear with me here. Share this. Here we go. All right. Hopefully you guys can see this. This is on our website. This is a lady that lives near us. She had a little girl who was on this earth way too short. And I'll read her story first, but this is one of the organizations that Griffin Air supports. And if you feel like supporting them, you'll be able to do that. But feel free to drop a calls that you support in the comment section, and why you support them. But this says Adelie Ashburn was a 2-year-old little girl who celebrated each day of her short life with kindness, laughter, and adventure. She enjoyed animals, spending time outdoors, and making others laugh. During her 6-month battle with adrenal cancer, she inspired many people with her strength and continued love of each and every day. In memory of Addie's Colors is dedicated to helping children who are fighting life-threatening illnesses and their family to celebrate their lives through art, nature, kindness, and embracing each child's unique personality and experience. In memory of Addie's Colors is an organization dedicated to providing supportive services for children with chronic illnesses and developmental disabilities, as well as their families. They are dedicated to helping children who are fighting life-threatening illnesses and their families to celebrate their lives through art, nature, kindness, and embracing each child's unique personality and experience. They offer counseling services, a child loss grief support group, and a caregiver support group, and more. For information, visit addiescolors.org. So that's one of the companies that we try to send support to. And feel free to, if you have anybody you support, feel free to drop those in the chat. We'll highlight them as well. But that, I just thought it'd be nice to kind of share that on our live tonight. So back to your comments. Ryan says, if inverter communicating systems are so better, why do manufacturers sell non-communicating systems besides for people mobile homes? Oh, so a lot to uncover with that question. So the first answer to your question is, why do they sell non-communicating systems? It's because it's cheaper. At least during the making of this video, they're cheaper, and I'm sure they will be for the most part. You do see companies getting creative. Sorry, I've got the hiccups all of a sudden. You do see companies getting creative with this. You see non-communicating inverter systems that have come out. You also see companies that are making inverter systems, but trying to come up with ways, like, for example, we sell Daikin Fit. It's a more budget-friendly inverter option. And in some cases, folks are being able to buy the Fit after the rebates and everything for the same price they would have paid for a single-stage unit. So it's like a no-brainer. But if you are in a mobile home, we do see the, folks that are dealing with that, because it's a high static application. You can't just purchase any old system and throw it in there. And so, you don't have a choice. You have to do a non-communicating system. How long will that last? I don't know. I think that for a number of years to come, even as inverter systems become more of the thing in our country, and they begin to take up more and more market share, you're still going to see non-communicating technology being used in applications such as mobile homes, only because of how adaptable. I don't even think that's the right word, but how you can basically put anything, and make it work in that mobile home. Because sometimes you got to do some weird things. And when I say weird, I just mean like you might have to do a mobile home furnace with a non-communicating coil, uncased or cased. I don't know. I mean, that's a whole rabbit hole we could continue down, but I don't think that's going to change right away. I think it's going to be, even as inverter systems still become a thing or still stay a thing over the years to come. What I think is eventually going to happen with mobile homes in general is you're going to see more and more mini split technologies, ducted or ductless, being used, just like we see a lot of RVs doing. A lot of RVs have those rooftop units, you're going to see more of that being used in these, actual mobile homes. That's my opinion, though. I don't know that for sure. Carl says, do you do combustion analysis? Yes, when necessary. We don't have a lot of fossil fuel burning appliances in our area. We used to do a lot of combustion analysis when we did oil boilers and furnaces years ago. We don't do them anymore at Griffin Air. People just don't take care of their stuff. So we were so busy with heat pumps and split systems and mini splits that we just stopped doing them. I was the only one. I had one other person that was starting to learn them, and I was the only one that could do them, and it was just too much, so we just said, get rid of the oil customers. Plus it's, seems like every year that market share goes down. People get rid of the oil and they go with something like a heat pump. So, it's not like it hurt us bad or anything like that. Ryan says, I guess the answer is price, but even bigger companies like Bosch don't even provide a communicating option. Yeah, again, Bosch was the first that I knew of that came out with an inverter system with non-communicating technology here in the States. So we've seen other companies follow suit, but I think we're going to see even more companies following suit. I think as time goes on and you start to see single stage systems go away because the standards keep getting higher, and then you'll start to see these multi-stage units. You're going to eventually see where it won't even make sense to do a multi-stage unit because you're going to be able to do inverter systems for, just as cheap, right? With these different solutions coming out. And so everybody will be doing inverters. The question becomes, will they go communicating, non-communicating, and why for certain situations. So Arch says, are two-stage heat pumps more expensive to fix? Is a two-stage heat pump worth it in an area that is pretty dry most of the year, except during the 3-month monsoon? There's a lot to, as far as are they worth it, I can't answer that. It depends on too many variables there on whether or not you'd get your money back. But if it's not that much more than the single stage system, it is going to save you some energy. It's going to save you some money. Are they more expensive to fix? In general, they're usually going to be around the same, I would guess, as a single stage system. But, there are a few things that it might be a little higher on. If it's, for example, if the two-stage compressor is more expensive than the single stage compressor, well, there you go. So I think it just matters. It just matters on the situation as far as the answer to that goes. Bren says, it's going okay so far. Just getting started. I have solar system. Oh, nice. So upgrading to a really efficient system is important to me. Nice. Yeah, definitely find somebody that don't be anybody's guinea pig. Find somebody that knows what they're doing, that they, even if you have to maybe pay a little more, get somebody, you don't want to be somebody, somebody that's never done what they're about to do for you, Purple Monster says, if 410A was good for the environment and has no chlorine in it, then what is the reason for a new refrigerant to be coming out? The reason they say is because it has too high of a GWP. That's something you can look up. GWP stands for global warming potential, and they say that they give it numbers. So they'll say it's this much GWP, it's this much more, potential to warm the planet compared to carbon dioxide or other refrigerants or whatever. So they all have a GWP attached to that gas. And so they're looking at options that would have a lower GWP than 410A does. Brian says, simple doesn't stress me. So Cold to Lose says, when I selected the fit, it was only $300 more than a single stage 15.2 SEER during the $1,650 Daikin instant rebate. Nice. Yeah, I mean, that's the thing. A lot of folks are finding out, when they do the math, it's a significant savings there, and obviously those rebates could go away eventually, but for now it doesn't make sense for a lot of folks to save the money when it's really not that big of a cost difference. And in some cases, especially if you're talking about $300, you could save enough in some states to for it to have paid for itself within months, not even the year, but literally within months. So especially if you're replacing a really old clunky system, right, you should see a big difference there. Let's see. Joey's cleaning lady, good to see you, says Sprinter or Ford Transit. I am a heat and air guy. I don't have a I don't have a preference on that. Maybe one of these other guys do. We at Griffin Air have the Dodge Pro Masters, but I don't really know or care. If I got a better price on a Ford Transit van tomorrow versus our Dodges, I don't have any brand loyalty. So Let It Snow says, do you know a company in Maryland who can install Goodman or Romana? I don't know any companies in Maryland, which is kind of a shame. Well, let me take that back. I do know a couple companies in Maryland, but I don't know anybody well enough to give you a good referral. So I would recommend checking out their dealer locator. I would also recommend, shopping around and finding the good companies and, ask them what brands they install. Coolin' with Kraus wants to know what part of Maryland you're in. I just helped somebody in, why is it that I can't remember what town they were in? But I just helped somebody on our guide not long ago, like maybe a month ago, and they had a very unique situation. Oh, I know where they were. They were just east of Silver Springs, just west of Silver Springs. Oh, so Rockville. So you're not, I used to live in College Park, so you don't live too far from where I lived. And you might say, well, Josh, why don't you know more companies up here? The company we worked with a lot was a commercial company. So I actually was the facilities manager for a building and did all of their heating and air. But when we did have to, reach out to a local heating and air company, or when they did before I got there, it was a company out of DC, and they were a commercial company, so they don't even do residential. Arch says Daikin offers a 6-year unit replacement and a 12-year parts warranty on their 2-stage package unit, and only a 12-year parts warranty on their single-stage units. Good to know. Yeah, they've got the 6-year unit replacement warranty on, I'm wanting to say, the 16 SEER split systems. And so we've had customers decide to go with the fit just because they can get that 12-year unit replacement warranty with the unit. So if that, even the extra investment, not just the savings buying an inverter system, but they see, value in that as well. Coolin' with Kraus, are you in Maryland, or is that why you asked what part Let It Snow is in? I'm just curious. And if so, where are you at in Maryland? Let's see. Getting close to 9:30. One thing I do every week is before folks check out or before we leave, I tell folks that if you know a good company in your area, feel free to share their information and where they're located. So if you know a good heating and air company, please share that in the chat. It's always good, especially if some of you guys have done that before. Feel free to do it again, but it's always good to do that because somebody might be near you, just like Let It Snow said, hey, I'm in Maryland, and Coolin' with Kraus said, hey, what part of Maryland are you in? Arch says, might be worth paying a little extra for a 2-stage because of the warranty and maybe qualify for a tax credit. Good point. That's always something to consider. Rebates are pretty much non-existent here, which is odd to hear because a lot of the rebates come from the manufacturers. So, so rebates should be in effect everywhere. If you don't have a company that's offering them, maybe ask them, hey, is the manufacturer offering some sort of rebates? Because I would say most manufacturers have something. Even the cheap ones, they're gonna usually have something. Cooling with Kraus says, I was in Baltimore based when up north, but a couple companies you can give a call to, I recommend, would be RMC Mechanical, which is funny. We have an RMC where I'm located here in Virginia, Beltway and Farnan and Dermer. So shout out to all those companies. Cooling with Kraus giving you a shout there. He said he's not sure of the radius though. So yeah, shout out to those good companies. Joey's Cleaning says we need a pricing guide. Cooling with Kraus says used to be in Carroll County, Frederick. Yeah, so Frederick, Maryland, I think is somewhat near where I lived. Not too far anyway. I'm wanting to say. Maybe I'm wrong on that. I only lived there for like 10 months, 9 months. So I wasn't there long enough to really know it real well. But now you're in Central Florida, so I'm a little jealous. I'm sure you're busy if you're doing HVAC down there. Gary says, glad to mention A+ HVAC in Westfield, Massachusetts. So shout out to A+. They are my guys for my 42K BTU Mitsubishi system. So shout out to the A+ in Westfield, Massachusetts. So yeah, we're going to wrap up in just a moment. If you do have any more questions, feel free to drop those. As always, we're here every week, or have been every week for the last several, I don't know when I started doing these lives, but it's probably been about 3 months now, 2 or 3 months. We've been here every week, 8:30 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. And so we'll be back again next week and answering questions. But yeah, if you have any more questions, feel free to drop those. Also, if you have any other heating and air companies in your area that you know are good, feel free to drop them as well. If you're in Virginia, near Williamsburg or the Middle Peninsula, Northern Neck, give Griffin Air a call. That's us. Ryan says, any new video series ideas you're thinking of? I really liked your warranty battle you did years ago. Would be cool if you had other pros come on and talk about why they like a certain brand over another. Ryan, I've tried, man. I have tried to get other heating and air people on here, and you would not believe how camera shy a lot of them are. They like to get on Facebook and argue over which brands are better than others, but it's been tough. I've only found a couple. We've done a few videos, but I think it would be cool to do something, maybe not a tournament like I did with that, but just some sort of hey, I'm so and so, I sell this or that brand and this is why. It would be free advertising for a lot of those companies. They could say, hey, I'm so and so in this city and we do heating and air, and and they could share it. But yeah, it's been interesting. I have had a few conversations with some other heating and air guys about collaborating on a few things, but when I've thrown it out to heating and air guys to say, hey, if you want to come on and talk about why you sell what you sell, they get camera shy. So it's kind of funny. Arch says, the utility company only has a rebate for approved contractors, and none of them are here in our city. Yeah, I was referring to manufacturers' rebates. So yeah, utility companies do have restrictions and things like that. But yeah, you should be able to find, if you're replacing a heating and air system, a lot of companies have rebates and things like that. The manufacturers are going to have something. Emery says, what would happen if an AC contactor failed? Well, they fail from time to time, and different things can make them fail, but contactors are one of the electrical components that we still see used today and have been used for the last 50 years. And they're very, very simple. They're literally just a solenoid that pulls this little flipper, little plate down, and they fail from time to time. And what would happen is they just simply wouldn't operate usually, especially if that solenoid were to have some sort of an issue. Maybe the resistance is too high, or an open winding, or whatever reason it's no longer pulling in like it should. And usually they just have to be replaced. They're pretty insignificant part. When I say insignificant, they're less costly than, say, a compressor or a board. Sheldon says, what is the lowest SEER rating allowed for new installation in your area? Can you comment on SEER 2 rating system? So as I was saying that before, it does matter where you're located. Where I'm located here in Virginia, if I remember correctly, and I could be wrong, so don't hold this against me. I'm just throwing this out of memory because we have done a video on this. And I'm wanting to say that the new SEER 2 minimums here in Virginia, I'm wanting to say is 14.3 SEER 2, I think is the minimum for heat pumps, split systems. And then if it's a package unit, it's 13.4. And then as far as my comments on SEER 2, I don't really have any comments. I think it's another hurdle or obstacle that, homeowners have to educate themselves on, so they understand the verbiage that, heating and air companies are using when they're comparing apples to apples. You have some companies that are still doing it the old way. So they're selling folks with a SEER 2 rating, but they're using the old SEER rating, attached to that proposal. And then you have other companies that are offering their proposals with the SEER 2 ratings, which are lower. So maybe it's a marketing thing there. And, I think it's just one more thing that homeowners have to kind of learn the lingo to understand if they're getting a good quote or not. That's my comment on it. It's kind of a shame. But they have to have something. They have to have a way. I've said it before, and I'll say this again. It's still not a good, accurate representation for folks to be able to compare inverter systems to other systems. So, for example, a 17 SEER inverter Daikin fit is significantly more efficient than a 16 SEER single stage heat pump system. So for somebody to say, well, it's only 1 SEER higher, it's only a little more efficient. It's not a good representation of understanding of how efficient that inverter system is going to be in comparison. So I still don't think it's I think eventually we're going to have yet again, they're going to go from SEER, now they went to SEER 2. I'm predicting, I don't think it's that bold of a prediction to say that there will come a day that you're going to see something else, some other rating that people can use with a number attached to it, to compare heating and air systems when they're buying them. I don't even think it's fair to the homeowner to use these ratings when, you have, say, an inverter system, and then you go to, okay, well, now we've got inverter systems. Well, what about non-communicating versus communicating? And what's the SEER rating? Well, there's a big difference there too, especially in some of these technologies when you have non-communicating inverter systems that still operate very similar to how a single stage system would operate. Is it an inverter system? Yes, but it's still running at 100% capacity or very close to it a lot, because it's non-communicating, So I think, it'll just be interesting to see how that all shakes out too. That's my comment. Arch says a brand debate would be worth watching. All the HVAC contractors who have given estimates all say that what they sell is great. Yeah, I think that's a really good point. it's interesting when I do job interviews at Griffin Air, I'll interview guys that sell, products for another company. And it gives me an interesting perspective. And I've had friendly debates with some of those guys. They'll say, I think Carrier's the best. And I'll say, well, why do you think that? And they'll say, well, I just think it is. I think it's the best to install. I think they're the most reliable. And I'll say, okay, have you installed anything else? Well, no, I've only been doing this for 4 years, and that's the only brand I've ever installed. And I'm like, well, then, so I've had friendly debates is kind of the point. I had that friendly debate specifically with one guy one time, and, he just loved Carrier, but he only knew Carrier, and that's fine. I think it's great that he had a brand that he loved, but, I've worked for different companies. I have also installed probably 4 or 5, maybe more than that, probably 7 or 8 different brands at Griffin Air, trying to figure it out, find the good and bad and ugly of all these different companies before we, decided what we were going to hang our hat on. Arch says Daikin has rebates for the mini split systems, but not package units. That may be true. I don't sell a lot of package units to know off the top of my head. They've never really leaned into the package units because it's such a low market share. They lean more into being the first to discover new technologies and be cutting edge with inverter and mini splits and things like that. If we had more wall space and didn't have to have wires ran everywhere, we'd consider one of these ductless inverter systems. Yeah, there's pros and cons. I'll give you that. Brian says 100% is dehumidifying. Arch says you call the manufacturer and they tell you to ask the contractor for your questions. That's something that you're going to see that a lot, man. Purple Monster says, as an HVAC guy, I hate that HVAC equipment needs to be registered with the manufacturer. In order for the parts warranty to go from 5 to 10 years, it should be an automatic 10 years when sold. It is in some states. There are states that is the case. So, if you hate it enough, move to one of those states and you won't have to deal with that anymore. But no, I hear you on that, especially when you have these homeowners that say, hey, I had so-and-so install my system a number of years ago. They went out of business and now I need a new heat and air company. And so you're trying to help them out. And then you got to break the news to them the hard way that company that they knew and loved, they never registered their warranty. And so, the homeowner assumes the contractor took care of it. The contractor either assumes that they aren't or that they don't care or whatever the reason they didn't do it. And, it's the homeowner that obviously ends up paying for that. Colin Kraus says, good show. Keep it up. Have a good night. Good night, pal. Brian says Daikin has McQuay and Goodman package units on the commercial side. Yeah, my dad actually works at one of the Daikin applied factories, which used to be McQuay, which is kind of crazy how we both ended up in the heating and air industry and took very different roads to get there. It's not like my dad did heating and air when I was growing up. He did not. So Ryan says, do you ever refuse a customer over their crawl space size and the condition of their attic or crawl space? Yes. Yeah, we've done that. I tell my guys that, as long as they don't abuse it, as long as they don't get too crazy, that we will have to do that from time to time. If they get to where they're like, every crawl space is too tight, I ain't going in there. Well, there comes a point where if you're not making money, then, you've got to do some of that. But yes, we have had to tell homeowners, especially homeowners, a lot of homeowners can't help, that the house was built tight or whatever. But what they can help is, things like if we go there and the crawl space is a disgusting mess and they don't want to invest in, getting it nicer, getting it cleaned out, getting it less swampy, getting it less full of pests, getting it less of insulation falling. We see that sometimes. Things like that. And, when you have a homeowner like that, unfortunately, you have to break the news to them. Hey, you've got to get an exterminator in here, or you need to get this, this swamp taken care of before we can work there. We just can't work there. Jeff of KWK, is that you? Sheldon, is there a benefit to mini splits having the metering device in the outdoor unit? Is there a benefit? I think I did have an answer to that, but I'm drawing a blank at this very second. I think that I'm drawing a blank on that right now, Sheldon. I feel like I've answered this question before, and I've answered it with flying colors. Purple Monster, you're a pro. What is the benefit of that? Yeah, I'm drawing a blank right now, but I think there is a little bit of a benefit. I think the downside though is you can't connect your gauges to the unit and do a proper subcool measurement and things like that. You can't even put the units in charging mode in a lot of cases, in most cases. So, Brian's on here too, so he might be able to answer that too. But is there a real benefit? I don't know if there's a significant benefit, but I also wonder if they do that because of the whole well, no, if they had the metering device in the indoor unit, you wouldn't have to insulate the small line. You see mini splits, they have to insulate both lines. Well, that's because the metering device is in the outdoor unit. So, is there a real benefit? I'm drawing a blank at this very moment, but I'm sure there's probably something I could throw out there. Arch says, we're going to make sure we confirm the warranty with the manufacturer and not rely on the contractor. That's smart. Get that warranty certificate. I always send it to the customer when we register them. Purple Monster says, who's we're? Brian says, we had a closed cell house with an air to water system going in. Ryan says, what do you do in that situation with the tight crawl spaces? Do you talk to them about ductless mini splits? And with ductless, how to you ventilate since you don't have return vents anymore? It just depends. Every situation is different, but sometimes we've got to have a rough conversation and say, we can't work here. It just depends. Sometimes we try to sugarcoat it and tell the homeowner that it's just too much work for us to do at that very moment, which is kind of true, right? It's too much work for us to go in that horrible condition. But sometimes we're brutally honest and we say, you need to have this taken care of and straightened out for us to be able to work here. Brian says, Carrier did it. It was dumb. Arch says, we as me and my wife is going to make sure our unit is registered. Brian says, cheesy server room, 1 speed. Okay, guys. Well, we're going to wrap up in just a moment. If you have one last hurrah here, throw a heat and air company out there in the area that you're in, give them a shout out, especially if you like them. Do them a service by sharing them and where they're located. Gil, have a great night. Thanks for joining us. We'll be back next week. Same time, same place. I'm going to try to continue to come up with new segments, things to break up the chat and the questions a little bit and have some fun with you guys. I appreciate all the support you guys have given us. Please subscribe if you haven't. That always helps. We should be coming up on 50,000 subscribers this summer, and as we get to closer to that, maybe we'll do something fun with that too. But the goal right now is to get to 100,000 within the next year or two, and that's when most people that maybe we can get behind some closed doors at that point. That's when companies feel more inclined to talk to you when you hit that 100K mark. So definitely hit that subscribe button if you haven't already. That definitely helps us, if nothing else. Even if you hate me, still hit that subscribe button. Ryan says, how do you properly ventilate a house that uses mini splits? Are there indoor units good enough, or do you need an ERV? So in our area, we always do it through a dehumidifier, because I live in a more humid area. So we have dehumidifiers that we do the ventilation with. Arch says, thank you again. Have a good evening. Have a good night, Arch. Brian says, depends. Yeah, I mean, it depends on where you're located. I think Brian's here in Virginia as well, if I remember correctly. So just kind of depends on your house, your situation, what state you're in. And I would talk to a pro. That's what I always say. Talk to your local pro. We just had a video come out today where I talk about the 5 mistakes that homeowners make when they're buying heating and air systems, and I think that's one of them. I think that homeowners go online and they learn so much. They read blogs and they watch my videos and they watch videos of people smarter than me, and they learn so much about heating and air in a very small, short window of time, and they take advice from people they've never met, and then they try to go to their pro, and they do one of two things. They either try to turn a bad pro into a good one, so they've got this pro that it did not do a heat load calculation, or they're not providing a good price on a good system, and they try to get them to do the heat load calculation, or to do a price on a good brand or whatever. They're trying to turn that bad contractor into a good one, but they'll also sometimes take that knowledge or that advice that they received online, and then they'll go to their contractor and say, hey, I read this online and that's what I want from you. And I think that there's a lot of power in just getting several quotes and just ask questions and find that contractor that you like, and take the advice of the best contractor you can find, because they live in your area. Not every area is the same. If you take my advice, I live in a humid coastal environment in Virginia. You'd be silly to do what I do in your area if you live in the Pacific Northwest, where it's more of a cooler, humid environment, or in the Midwest, where it's maybe less humid, or if you live in the Rocky Mountains and it's super cold. Where I live, it's warm most of the year. Where you live, it's cold most of the year, and so on. So, it's just, there's so many different thought processes, and that's the piece of advice I would say is, don't take my advice in all situations. Ask questions to all those contractors and go from there. Your local pros are smarter than I am about your area, and not just me, everybody on the internet. So had to get on my soapbox there for a second, but that's something I've noticed a lot. Is I had this lady that I was helping up in Maryland just a few weeks ago, and she's like, I want a Bosch because I saw you do a video on Bosch. And I was like, maybe that's not the best idea. Maybe, you should consider a different brand, and luckily we ended up finding someone that did what she needed, but it was tough. We had to go through multiple companies, because not only did she want a Bosch, but she also had a mobile home. So she needed a very specific system and a contractor that knew how to do that. So anyway, we just had a few more questions come through. We're going to answer those, but then we're going to wrap up, guys. We're almost at 10 o'clock. So let me answer these last couple questions, and we'll call it a night. Let's see. Make sure I don't miss anybody here. Ryan says, we already answered that. Arch, have a great night. Emery says, what kind of codes are there in your area? Lots of them. One code that we have to deal with that a lot of places don't, another thing that just comes to mind is, I live in a coastal area, so we have to worry about the height of the outdoor units, making sure they're above the flood zone or the flood level. Brian says, I have not watched it yet, or I lived it. I hear you. Low area is in general. Sheldon says, will you do a heat load calculation when replacing a system? Is it necessary? So we usually do at least a quick one. Maybe not like a full blown room by room, but me and my guys, if we're going to do a new system, we want to at least make sure that the system is sized right for the house before we give a quote. And there have been times where we've had to say to the homeowner, what you have is not right. Or the homeowner will say to us, they'll say, hey, I have a 2-ton, but I want to put a 3 in here because I just want to go up. I want to have a little more oomph. And we have literally walked away from jobs because of that, because they wanted to do something crazy like that. So anyway, guys, we're up to almost 20 people in here, so I do appreciate your support. Again, please hit that subscribe button. Even if you don't like my fat face, hit that subscribe button. We're going to get to 100,000 sooner than later. Hopefully by next year, we'll hit 100K. Maybe we'll have one video take off and we'll get there quicker. But, we're going to get to 100,000 subscribers, and then we'll get to really be, I'll be able to get behind some closed doors. I'll be able to go to some big companies and say, hey, I'm a big YouTuber. I have 100K subscribers, and be able to show you guys maybe some things that, that I'm not able to get always behind those closed doors. But stay tuned. I do have some doors that we're going to be getting behind here very soon. Probably, I think it's looking like mid-July, I'm going to be taking a trip. And so I'm going to leave it at that. I'm going to leave you hanging, but we're going to be getting behind some closed doors here coming up in July, it looks like. So excited about that if you can't tell. Do you do a manual J load calculation? I actually, if I do need to do an actual manual J load calculation, I've got a guy that does them for us, especially if we've got to provide it, as we do on some installs. Brian says Alliance Mechanical is near you. He's a good guy. I have met his wife, and she was very nice. So I've never met, at least I don't think I've met him, but his wife was very nice. So I think they do a lot more commercial stuff, or at least some commercial stuff. So pretty cool. Emery says, how do you size ducts? I use a duculator, and then, we have a process with that as well. So anyway, guys, we're going to wrap up with that. It's almost 10 o'clock, a little bit longer show than usual, but we were rocking tonight. We got up to almost 30 people in here. I think we've got to 30 tonight at one point. So, which is pretty cool. So, Brian, you need to come down and hang out with me. Maybe me, you, and the Alliance Mechanical guy. Maybe we can all grab lunch or something someday. So that'd be kind of cool. But thank you, guys. I really do appreciate your support. Thank you so much. Please hit that subscribe button. We'll be back next week, 8:30, right here, live, with all my uhs, ums, and head scratching, and so on. Sheldon, you slipped in one last question. I'm going to answer this one last question, and this will be the last one. Sheldon says, do you recommend Stop Leak? I have used Stop Leak. It's not my go-to, but if I have a unit that is on its last leg, they're just trying to get a little more life out of that system, and it's got a very, very small leak. And when I say small, I mean I'm not having to add refrigerant within a 12-month window. If I am, then Stop Leak's not going to work. In other words, if I have to add refrigerant in April and then I have to add it again in June, Stop Leak ain't going to work. The leak's too big. But I have added it to systems to get them through, if they're trying to get a little more life out of that system. We just put refrigerant in it. They want to try to get get a little more life out of it, and we'll throw some Stop Leak in it at times. But leave it at that. Make it a great week, guys. Thanks again. As always, thank you for tuning in, and we'll see y'all next week, 8:30, right here, 8:30 Eastern time, by the way. We'll see you then. Thanks.